The chairman will come a bit later. I will take his place. Item 1 on the agenda. Information paper issued since the last meeting. There is one. It's about referral from the Public Complaints Office on policies relating to protection for working elderly people. That's for your reference. Item 2 on the agenda, items for discussion at the next meeting. I'd like to remind members that 3 have been proposed by the administration. 1 additional provision for Social Security recipients. I think that is a routine item. Number 2, setting up a day activity center cum hostel for severely. Number 2, report on the progress of the implementation of the recommendations of the Lump Sum Grant Independent Review Committee. I believe that is related to the best practice guide. Number 3, setting up a day activity center cum hostel for severely mentally handicapped persons and supported hostel for mentally handicapped persons in Changsha Estate, Shamshui Po. I believe there will be such new items from this meeting onwards. There is another one last one, which is on the Dills Garden Elderly Center, and some elderly people will have to be relocated. It was on the agenda today, but the LWB and Development Bureau sat down with me and the chairman last week, and it was found that the paper from the Development Bureau was a far cry from what we wanted them to say. It was just a simple report reiterating their stance. That is about the Dills Corner elderly home. And we said that that would be a waste of our time, and we asked them to redo the paper, but then they said they could not do it before today. The chairman also asked a professor to advise how we should make use of the vacated location for the use by elderly people, and the Development Bureau said that it would have to give it some thought. We hope the Development Bureau will get in touch with the professor in these 2 weeks and redo the paper. I believe the fastest they can act would be to have this item for May. So I would say that we add that to the agenda, but that is only a proposal at the moment. And it really depends whether the Development Bureau can write an up-to-the-par paper for our discussion. We'll, of course, send reminders to them that they should get ready by May. Any views on those 4 items, members? Dr. Fernando Chung. Chairman, I think infrastructural projects would not be controversial, but this lump sum grant issue and the RCHE at Dills Corner Garden would be quite controversial. I don't know whether 2 hours would be enough. Okay, I take your point. I would say that we advance the meeting to 9:30 so that we have enough time to tackle controversial subjects. But of course that would depend on the coordination between the bureaus, the chairman and the clerk. As I said, we should schedule the meeting for the time being from 9:30 to 12:45. And also, Chairman, I'm aware that the paper on Dills Corner Garden should come to us 5 clear days before the meeting, but that did not happen this time around. Now that we're giving them another month, I would say that they have to submit the paper in good time. It would be so difficult to carry on a discussion if we see the paper only when we have the meeting, right? The clerk will remind the administration. Yes? Leung Yu Chung? With regard to the Dills Corner Garden, I'd like to know whether we can meet the organization concerned. Because third parties can say whatever they like, but it may not be the real picture. Well, depending on the time factor, and let us see how many operators would like to speak. Because as you know, we need time for ourselves as well. Let's see whether we will still have time for the operators to speak. Well, but the operator will only get to know the view of the administration only when the paper is out. I believe we should give them the chance to speak up. Well, my understanding is that if the Development Bureau will react to the views of the Chinese university professor, then my understanding is that that view has been transacted between the chairman and the operators. But let us KIV the time factor, and maybe we can invite the operator to come here. But we really need to see how we can deal with the timing. Fernando Chung. Chairman, it's clear that the issue is developing, and I believe those involved would know the latest situation. Yes, we can try to coordinate with the operators. Maybe 2 or 3 representatives can be sent. If all operators come along, I don't think we'll have enough time on that day. But not just operators, the elderly and their families. Well, if that's the case, I think we need to give some more thoughts to the matter and see whether they are happy to send representatives. Okay, thank you. Now we go into the meeting proper. Let's invite the administration to come in. Item 3. Setting up a new contract residential care home for the elderly cum daycare center in a public rental housing development at ex-Kwai Chung Police Married Quarters site, Kwai Chung. Attending for this item, we have Mrs. Alina Chan, PAS for Labor and Welfare, Ms. Cecilia Lee, Assistant Director of Social Welfare Elderly, and also Mr. Kenneth Wu, CEO, Subventions and Planning, SWD. Welcome to you. Would the administration please introduce the paper? Ms. Lee. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. I'd like to introduce an architectural project. This is to construct a 100-place contract residential care home for the elderly with a 20-place daycare center for the elderly. This is to be in Kwai Chung. The site used to be the Kwai Chung Police Married Quarters. We are subsuming this under a PRH development. The application this time around, with regard to the cost of the project, it will come from the Lotteries Fund. But usually, when the Lotteries Fund Advisory Committee has supported the item, however, if the recurrent expenditure is going to be more than $10 million, then we need to have the endorsement of the Finance Committee. And before we go to the FC, we will have to give a detailed introduction of the project at the WS panel. From the paper, you would know that this is within a PRH development. The PRH will provide 800 odd units with a population of 2,400. We think that this is a very appropriate place for us to provide an RCHE. According to present planning, by the end of 2014, we can commence the project for completion and the award of contract in 2019. Starting from 2001, we have already awarded 24 contracts for RCHE and 22 have started to provide service. If I may refer to Annex 1, in the coming 3 years, there will be 7 contract RCHEs that will be commissioned. I remember it was half a year ago when I came to the panel, I informed members that there would be 7 projects that would be providing service. But there are changes because the first two, Sha Tin and Sham Shui Po, we said that they would be or will be commissioned. And now you can see from the table in Annex 2 that these two indeed will be rolled out in 2014. We are making arrangements with departments to see we can find suitable sites to provide elderly services. And if I may refer to Annex 3, we have earmarked 11 sites which can be used to develop RCHEs. And in our papers, half a year ago, we also mentioned 11 sites. But could I draw your attention to one point? We have actually added 10 and 11 to this list. This goes to show that we are making arrangements continuously with different departments in order to also take the advantage of private development and also redevelopment project. Maybe I should halt here for members' questions.
Thank you, Assistant Director. I'd like to remind members that the agenda today, I think the item will need to go to the FC for approval. According to our Rules of Procedure 38A, members should declare any direct or indirect interest that they may have. So we have Mr. Leung Yu Chung, Fernando Zhang, and Mr. Albert Ho, and Mr. Leung Chi Chung, and Mr. Pan Siu Ping. Shall we say 4 minutes each? Mr. Leung Yu Chung. Thank you, Chairman. I think increasing the number of RCHE places is necessary, and that we should do it as soon as possible. But one problem is that the site in question is near. I think it has been opposed by many residents in the vicinity. They are opposed to the residence development there because the traffic situation there is very congested, and there is also a lack of community facilities. And they would prefer that community facilities be provided there rather than building a residential, putting it for residential development. So there is the issue of community concern, and I don't know how the department will deal with that. And secondly, we all know that in Kwai Chung, overall speaking, the population there is aging, and because of that, we need more centers for the elderly. Other than RCHEs, we also need other facilities. For example, recently the police has been arresting elderly people in public housing estates for gambling. But actually these people are not making, large bets. They're just playing cards for small odds, but the police have carried out many raids and many people have been arrested. As a result, the senior citizens, they are not very happy. There are not many community centers, and there are not many homes for the elderly, so the senior citizens have nowhere to go. So as a result, they would spend the time playing cards, and because of that, they are arrested. So for the RCHE, it only provides for 100 places. I think that is not too many. And I also like to ask another question here, that is whether or not you can provide more space for senior citizens to go to in the daytime, to participate in group activities or leisure activities, so that they can spend the time. I wonder whether that could be done. Assistant Director, I think this item, I think there are certain constraints for like other development projects. We understand Mr. Leung's point, that is centers for the elderly is an important facility, so that the elderly can spend the time going to the elderly centers for the elderly, or they can also go there if they need to seek any information. In the budget this year, we've actually provided additional resources to enhance the social centers into neighborhood centers. I think this will provide a place for the senior citizens to go to where there are social workers there who can assist them. For new premises, I understand that even in places where we have a large elderly population, where resources are allowed, and if we can find the premises, we will consider providing for more of these centers for the elderly. Mr. Mo, I think the whole PRH project has been discussed by the Housing Affairs Committee of the Kwai Chung District Council. At the time, the district councillors had a debate as to whether or not the site could be developed for public housing or community facilities. Having heard the different views, and we decided to build 2 PRH blocks on the site, and to also provide appropriate welfare facilities. We've also sought the approval of the Town Planning Board for this project. Perhaps you can later supplement further on the point about the transport situation. Dr. Fernando Chung. We always support the building of more RCGs because indeed the waiting list is very long. We have 2,000 odd people who die before the turn. But Mr. Leung's point was that planning for the district is very important. If in a particular district there is indeed a shortage of centers for the elderly, then other than the RCGs, daycare services and centers for the elderly are very important. It is government's slogan that the elderly should age in place, and that they should be able to live independently and to live with dignity, and they should have be able to make a choice. And I think centers for the elderly is an inferior choice. Unless it is absolutely necessary, I think we should assist the elderly to age in place. Of course, we will support your proposal to build the RCG, but regarding the contract RCGs, we are concerned that even though these homes are subvented, the quality of service is deteriorating all the time, because the method as to how you calculate subvention is very, very stringent, and the operators would need to rely on the 40% of the I think 40% of the operations are paid for by the self-financed portion of the operations. The situation now is that the subvented RCGs are now becoming sort of privatized. So I think you need to review the level of subvention for these homes. Another old issue is that we hope that the home should have a mission. If aging in place is your direction, then daycare centers and giving support for the carers and also home care services are essential, so that the elderly can really live in the community, and only as a last resort would they need to go to the RCGs. But the arrangement of your services that home care and daycare services are mutually exclusive, so the senior citizens can only choose one of those. And I think you should, you should not continue with this arrangement. And also the age requirement is also one problem. The daycare centers are only available for senior citizens. For someone who has cognitive problems, who is below the age of 60, they may be in a very difficult situation, but they cannot be admitted into these daycare centers. Shouldn't you review such policies? Assistant Director, could you respond to the point about the ratio? In Kwai Chung, we have a total of 17 RCGs, including 12 neighborhood centers, 2 district centers, and 3 activity centers. For the 3 activity centers, they will be upgraded to become community or neighborhood centers. So there is, so I don't think there is a severe shortage of these facilities in Kwai Chung. We hope that the elderly can age in place, and therefore in the budget for this year, we propose to add 1,500 places, together with 5,000 odd places. We're going to have more than 7,000 places. And we also will enhance the quality of service for the elderly, for the daycare centers and the home care services. The two are at the moment mutually exclusive. But last year we launched the the voucher scheme so that the two can actually coexist. So the pilot scheme will give us data to help us map out the direction for the future. Mr. Albert Ho, followed by Mr. Leung Chee Chung. Thank you. For those sites which have already been developed, if you want to convert the use of some existing facilities, it would result in a lot of opposition. And so we're put in a very difficult position. On the one hand, we support the government's initiative to build more of these RCHGs. On the other hand, I think in the past we've dealt with cases whereby shopping malls were converted to become RCHGs or home for the elderly. And again, the public raised a strong objection because when they bought their properties, they were told by the developers that there will be supermarkets and shopping malls, and suddenly the premises have become a home for the elderly. So there is so they are deprived of these community facilities, and then the population density will also increase. So as councillors, we're put in a very difficult position. We tried our best to I think in future, I think you should, for new development, you should conduct your planning properly well in advance, so when people move into the development, they will know what is the plan for the area. There are going to be more new developments going forward, and the earlier you plan for these home for the elderly and so on, I think you should plan this well in advance so that people would know what these plans are well in advance. And if I refer to Annex 1, I'm not familiar with these figures. First of all, for daycare centers, the number of, you've not given us the number of places. You're talking about the number of residential places, but you've not told us the number of daycare centers, and whether or not there is a waiting list. For example, nursing home places, including nursing, the daycare center is another item. Do you have figures for that? I don't understand what you mean by not applicable. Self-care hostel and home for the aged places. Number of subsidized places 1,151, and then number of elderly persons on the waiting list not available. Why is that the case? Assistant Director. For the daycare center places, we have about a waiting list of about 1,600. But yeah, we've not provided for that in the appendix. Perhaps in future we will also provide that figure. Annex 1 is about the number of residential care places. Waiting time on average is about 9 months. If I may also add that for the self-care hostel and home for the aged places, given that the senior citizens are typically frail in health, so since 2012, for the places of these self-care hostel and home for the aged, we have enhanced them to the standard of care and attention places, and we are also able to provide for continuous care so these are new plans which we've made to cater for the needs of the elderly. In that case, the number of persons in the waiting list should be added, and so I think that the number is very similar to the other items. It's simply the case that the waiting time is so short for the self-care hostel. I think the total number of care and retention homes, the number of places is 23,558. And since 2011, we've already put a stop to the waiting list. And all application after that would be application for care and retention places. If there's still applicants, they are still on the waiting list for the care and retention places. They will still be on the list, but there are fewer than 20 at the moment.
So
Next, Mr. Leung Chi Chung. From this paper, I can see some show of determination on the part of the administration. I hope RCHEs and CNA homes can be built as soon as possible. Actually, I think CNA homes are demanded by people who need institutional care because they are frail and weak. Of course, I wouldn't object to this mode of operation. As long as you have the land, you should always do your best to use them for elderly services. This time around, you are going to cooperate with the housing department. We have seen that this is done usually in new estates. On the ground floor of PRH blocks, you would try to situate these facilities. But with regard to redevelopment projects, it seems this has seldom been done. Later on, there will be 11 similar projects as stated in Annex 3. Such kind of cooperation will be repeated. I'd like to know, just now some members also mentioned this, if residents of the estate have a view, do you know whether they are in support or in objection? Because we have not seen any collection of views from the residents concerned. A few days ago, I talked to a member from the constituency. Actually, they do not object to RCHEs as such, but problems created by the RCHEs, and they are asking the administration to pay attention. For example, medical concerns. Usually, elderly people would call 999 and they are ferried to A&E departments. And residents would say that would bring pressure to be borne upon medical services. And as Mr. Leung Chung said, there would also be a bigger burden on transport. So have you talked to the housing department and the district council concerned? AD? When we plan a RCHE, we have to do liaison on many fronts. Medical is one of them. Resource-wise, we are going to send doctors to the RCHE, and if resources permit, RCHEs would actually employ a resident doctor. It was asked whether the RCHEs would always dial 999 if there is anything happening to the elderly people. That is not subsidized RCHEs do. They have a systematic approach to take care of elderly people, and only in extreme cases would they take elderly people to the A&E department. From the point of view of the subsidized RCHEs, actually the hospital authority does supply geriatric doctors with a whole team to RCHEs. That's a way to arrange medical services to institutionalized elderly people. So it is not necessarily true that elderly people are always ferried to A&E departments or outpatient clinics. Kwai Chung, no follow-up. Next, Mr. Poon Siu Ping and then Mr. Frankie Yik. Thank you, Chairman. Of course, we welcome the increase in RCHE places. The paper tells us that this will be a project within an HD project, and it is said that this will be completed in the last quarter of 2017. But you say that services will be available only in 2019 because there will be the necessity to rectify defects and also to identify an operator. Why do you have to use 2 years for doing that? And maybe you can compress the timetable for identifying an operator. You can do so nearing the end of the construction project. First of all, the timing factor. Can you compress the timetable? Second, para 5. As you said, you have earmarked 11 sites for development. That is in Annex 3. I'd like to know present progress. Do you have a timetable for any of those sites? Can you give an order to those 11 sites so we know which ones will be developed first? AD, we are also very anxious. We would also like to compress the timetable. If construction is completed, if we can start the tendering procedure as soon as possible, we'll do that. But we have to remember that when this is developed within an HD project or a private project, they only give us the bare shell. We hope the new operator will do the fitting out because they know the needs of the future operation, and that will at least take 9 months. The service provider will be given 9 months to do the fitting out works. So you can see that we have already compressed the timetable as much as possible, and we believe the tender can be awarded in 2019. Poon Siu Ping, the other question is about giving an order to the 11 sites. Frankly, we may have a more specific kind of timetable for the first few, but if they are in the latter part of the list, in fact, some of the sites have just been promised, and so those will come on stream at a much later date. Maybe after the meeting, we can let you know what will happen in the next 5 years. Annex 2 is to cover the next 3 years, and after the meeting, we can let you know what will happen to the sites in Annex 3 in the coming 5 years. Because we will be able to give you some indication for the next 5 years only. Okay, please try your best. I'd like to follow up on Mr. Poon Siu Ping's question. I'd like to remind the administration that this will be completed in the last quarter of 2017. And in fact, you can start the tendering process in September 2017. I don't think the construction side will be much varied in a matter of a few months. You can prepare your tender documents early, and then you can release the results in 2018. Give them just half a year for fitting out. Then by mid-2018, population intake can take place, and you don't have to wait till 2019. Please try to do your administrative work parallel to the construction phase. Frankie Yik, I completely agree with you, Deputy Chairman, that we can further compress the procedures. I hope the department will consider this. Of course, we welcome new services to take care of elderly people who have the need. May I refer to the background information paper, para 4. I have some interest in seeking more information. The special scheme to make use of privately owned sites for welfare use. You have received 40 organizations proposals, and there are about 60 in situ expansion projects, and you can add 9,000 places. I think that is quite a big number. I'd like to know whether you have preliminary assessment as to what the timeline is like, so we know what kind of planning is being done. PAS. Thank you, Mr. Yik. You are talking about the special scheme on privately owned sites for welfare uses. I believe there was some discussion here at a previous panel meeting, and we also provided an information paper. Now, I don't have that paper at hand, but maybe I can give the serial number of that paper to Mr. Frankie Yik for reference later on. But as far as I understand, we have got only initial information. The actual timetable will be different from project to project. According to the indications of interest from the organizations, you can see that there would be about 9,000 additional places for elderly services, as stated in the background paper. I'd like to follow up on the question by Mr. Yik. This panel has always shown concern with regard to the 62 sites because there will be a big impact generated, especially the one at Hong Shui Q, where 2,000 places will be provided. I understand the discussion will go on between the administration and the sector, but the sector is subject to change during the interim. Can we have a progress report every quarter, please? So we are kept abreast of the latest situation. Some may want to provide services for the elderly, some may like to provide rehabilitation services. Both are very much needed. Don't tell me a year later that we are still stuck at the same position, because we would like to give you timely advice. Can the PAS provide us with progress report? I agree, Chairman. Since the Bureau said that information has been furnished, they just have to update it every quarter. I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I like to have all information that may be available. Okay, PAS, please do that. Any more members who would like to speak in the first round? If not, I will ask my first round questions, and then we can start the second round right away. Just now, some members talked about the proportion of institutional places. I can see that in the new project, 60 will be subsidized and 40 will be self-sufficient. We said many times that that proportion should be changed. Or else, if only 60 out of 100 places are subsidized and which can be used by the grassroots, the other 40 have to be self-sufficient, and they can be so expensive. They can be at $10,000 or even more for a month. I believe the 20,000 who are in the waiting list are grassroots in the majority. You are telling us that the ratio is still 6:4. I would hope that you change it to 8:2, starting with this one. Actually, we would like you to have 100% subsidized places. So first of all, the ratio, can that be changed? Secondly, as for the daycare unit for the elderly, I thought there would be 20 places, but there will be 60 if I look closer. It's just that 40 will be self-sufficient again, and 20 will be subsidized. I don't know whether my understanding is correct. 40 non-subsidized and 60 are. So it's still 20 subsidized places in the daycare center. Would it be cost-effective? Or is it that the site does not allow you to do more? Okay, two questions. Ratio of 8:2, and whether you can increase the daycare unit places from 20 to 40, because you can then have better economy of scale. AD, let me talk about the RCHE places and DCU places in one project. When there is a daycare unit in an RCHE it is a much better arrangement. If the site is big enough, sometimes we can provide 30 daycare unit places, so we have to strike a balance. Here at this premise, we can provide 20 DCU places. I think it has represented a balance, so you're constrained by the site. Yes. And also, as for the RCHE, I think there is a good complement of staff already. But we also note members' concern about the ratio between subsidized and non-subsidized places. Can you start to do something with this one? You can wait with the construction, but the ratio can be decided at the last minute. You have a few years in your hands to give it more consideration. But our principle is clear. You should use the ratio of 8:2 from now on.
All right, we'll now go to the second round, and Fernando Chung, 3 minutes. Chairman, in the past, the homes, applicants to move into the homes there, they did not have to go into a means test. But this is, a means test in disguise. 60% don't have to, have to go through a means test. For the other 60%, those who can't afford it simply cannot be admitted. But the whole, home is built with public resources. So in your calculation, when you decide on the percentage of subvented places, you are being too harsh. As a result, many operators have to rely on the income from the 40% of the self-financed portion to make up for the inadequate subvention that you provide. Right now, the private homes for the elderly are not able to hire sufficient manpower, same for subvented institutions, because the working conditions are poor. And basically, we're talking about highly challenging job requirements, which require providing hygiene services, taking the elderly to the toilets, feeding them, and so on. These are no easy tasks for ordinary people. With the salary being so low and such a high mobility rate, obviously the quality of service is poor. And when there is not enough money, the elderly are not given sufficient care. In many of subvented homes, including the contra RCHEs, the service quality is being criticized all the time. So I hope that we have many. You have many projects coming on stream, and I think you really should review the level of subvention. And also for the forthcoming infrastructural projects, I note that very often you would rely on the lottery fund to pay for the construction of these facilities. We understand that this is one of the purpose for which the lottery fund is set up. But just because we have such a fund, I don't think the government should then say that it shouldn't use spend any extra amount. I mean, you can actually use one-off government funding to pay for the construction of these homes. I hope the resources from the lottery fund, more of the funds from the lottery fund could be reserved for more innovative projects to promote social welfare, rather than using the money entirely on the construction part. So don't just push that ratio any further. I hope the department will consider this further. I'd like to suggest that the lottery fund should reserve $10 billion for those redevelopment projects. Next, I'd like to ask members whether that is regarding the proposal to set up a new contra RCHEs come daycare unit in Kwai Chung. Do members have any objection in principle? If there is no objection, then the government will follow the procedure and go to the PWSC and the FC for funding approval. Thank you very much. And we now can move on to the next item, which is the creation of a permanent post and establishment of next generation infrastructure for the IT development of the SWD. And we have 3 more officials joining us for this item, including Ms. Lau Yun Ming, Ms. Maria Lau, Acting Deputy Director of Social Welfare, Ms. Sheila Kwong, Principal Social Work Officer, Information Systems and Technology, and Mr. Lee Tat Hong, Senior Systems Manager. I'd like to extend my welcome to the 3 officials. Ms. Lau, Acting Deputy Director, perhaps you can walk us through the paper. Thank you very much, Chairman. I'll briefly walk through the paper with members. The purpose of the paper is to brief members on 2 proposals. In 2012, we engaged a consultant to help us conduct a departmental IT plan to see how our IT system should be, what we should do in terms of the IT system going forward. And the paper contains 2 proposals. First of all, to redeploy permanently 1 post of Principal Social Work Officer to be designated as Principal Social Work Officer. In 2016, we have this is a supernumerary post which we have been reviewed on an annual basis. In 2012, I think regarding the IT system and technology development of the SWD and the welfare sector, we believe that the branch, there is a need for the branch to be led by a Principal Social Welfare Officer. Therefore, we are now proposing that we should not renew the supernumerary post on an annual basis, and that we should use our internal resources to create this permanent post. Another proposal is in relation to the establishment of our information technology infrastructure. At the moment, we already have an IT and technology infrastructure which were commissioned in 2005. The system was responsible for the providing backup for the 5,000 odd staff working in 238 offices of the department. Well, since 2005, the IT technology has developed in leaps and bounds. And in terms of hardwares and softwares, our current system is already very old. The servers and the data centers, some of the hardwares at those premises are no longer available in the market. In terms of the softwares, like the antivirus softwares, they are also becoming obsolete, and we are no longer getting any support. If we need to maintain the present system, it's going to be very expensive. And because of that, the consultant recommended that we should build a brand new IT infrastructure. The benefit is that we can make use of the latest technology, and also taking in mind the ongoing development and the demand for IT will continue to increase. So this infrastructure can help our continuous development going forward. For both projects, regarding the redeployment of a permanent post, no additional resources will be required. We will still be using the we already have a supernumerary post in place at the moment, So additional resources will not be required, and it will not involve the creation of any new directorate posts. For the proposed IT infrastructure, the amount involved is 176 million non-recurrent expenditure. We expect that it will take about 4 years to develop the new IT infrastructure. That is, if we have the support of members, then we will go to the ES panel for to put forward our proposal, and then in June this year we'll go to the FC for funding approval. If the funding approval is approved for the IT infrastructure, it would take about 4 years, and the new infrastructure will be commissioned by 2017-2018. Thank you, Ms. Lau. It's now time for members to put their questions. I'd like to remind members that since funding is required for this project, members are reminded to abide by Section 38 of our Rules and Procedures. Mr. Leung Yu Chung, Fernando Cheung, Mr. Pan Siu Ping, and Mr. Chi Ming. Mr. Tam Yu Chung, you're first. 4 minutes. I think that will do, Chairman. Regarding the details of the IT infrastructure, I think we need to study them carefully. Every time the government proposes any new welfare facility, for example, measures to tackle poverty or measures to help the low-income families, we're always told that it would take a year before the new facility could be put in place. You're going to take 4 years to build a new IT infrastructure. Why is it that it should take so long? Are you going to revamp the entire system? Why does it take 4 years? And 4 years later on, the new system you are now proposing to build may already become obsolete. And secondly, you are proposing to change the supernumerary post into a permanent one because and I would not object to that, but have you ever considered whether or not the post will still need to be a directorate grade, and whether or not someone at a lower rank could also perform the same duties? Thank you, Mr. Tam, for your questions regarding the infrastructure. We're told that there are many new. Whether or not it will help in terms of the new project, certainly it will. We said that the old age allowance and new measures of a similar kind, they are within the application system of our social security system. As for the benefits of developing new infrastructure, we have a lot of application systems. We have about 50 in our department. The bigger ones will be the social security systems, the long-term care for the elderly system, and also the IT system for the service users. Because we have many such new application systems in development, an analogy is that our flat is getting old, the cables are getting worn out, and the pipes are getting rusty. So the systems that I mentioned earlier on, for these application systems to perform better, and if you don't have a solid foundation, you simply can't do that. So for the infrastructure part, we want to, enhance it. And if we did that, then the new facilities and measures Mr. Tam referred to can be, can be provided better if we have a better infrastructure as the foundation. As to why it takes that long, and perhaps our colleagues can explain further. I've already told members that the IT infrastructure now at the moment is quite complex, involving a very large infrastructure supporting 238 of our service units and about more than 5,000 colleagues. As to what those systems involve, my other colleagues can give members the details. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee will explain why technically it's so complex. Thank you. I think members would have read from the paper in paragraph 3 of the paper that the timetable for this project is that we're going to take 4 years. In the first year, we will take the first year for the building, the tendering procedure, and the project will take about 2 years. Ms. Lau already said that we are supporting 200 odd offices and serving more than 5,000 employees. So it's a very complex system, and we need some time to build up the infrastructure. As to whether or not 2 years from now our hardwares and softwares will, please go on, will once again become obsolete, we will look at the supply of the hardwares and softwares at the time, and we'll try our best to use the most advanced hardwares and softwares. The new infrastructure can support the new technologies, so that if we have to add new equipments, and it will be a lot easier for us to do that compared with using the present system. What about the question regarding the necessity to create this director post? Over the years, we have been reviewing the supernumerary posts on an annual basis, because we want to see what there is a need to turn this supernumerary post into a permanent one. For the social welfare IT structure system, technology is developing very rapidly, and it will be the same going forward. And that's why we are proposing to create to practice post at the directorate level.
Fernando Chung and then Pun Xiuping. Thank you, Chairman. The government's computer system, especially those at SWD, are famous for their lagging behind technology. There has been quite some mistakes happening to the OALA issuance. I understand the Social Security staff are already at a stage that they are laughing at themselves. If there are people seeking help over the phone right before they are off duty, because the people would like to have information corrected, well, they would input into the computer, but then they have to wait almost an hour, and they are kept from leaving the office. I think that is quite unimaginable. You're talking about an expenditure of $170 million. What are you going to do with it? In terms of infrastructure, you are supporting 3 systems, 238 offices, 500 odd staff. That's too general. What exactly are you talking about? Is it that all the 3 systems, software, hardware alike, will be updated? The efficiency unit is talking about creating a one-stop service, as mentioned by Carrie Lam, that all public support services would be concentrated at a one-stop service. Is this related to that initiative? Also, there is another big area, Chairman. In rolling out services, the SWD can be very much helped with IT, like rehabilitation. The disabled people will be helped with communication and language training. Are you doing this or not? From this paper, I cannot see anything in that area. Can you please clarify the picture for me? Mr. Fernando Chung is talking about administration and services. Can you please add? Yes, of course. Thank you for the question. When we talk about infrastructure, what are we talking about? It covers many areas, and mainly the hardware, the CPU, data center, and also the network. Dr. Chung said that now the speed is quite low. This is because there are more colleagues using it and there are more services. The bandwidth is already reaching its limit. In fact, we have already added to the bandwidth. So when there are many users approaching the system at the same time, access is still allowed. But there are really too many service initiatives, and the present bandwidth infrastructure is already at its limit. We need a new infrastructure so that the bandwidth can be made more capable. Secondly, the email system. People always use email to communicate, and now the system is already at its saturation point. And also information security, because we are dealing with a lot of personal private information. We need to upgrade all these, and we are going to spend a big sum of money. And is that going to do any good to the IT appliance systems and also social security services? Well, yes, of course, but then the appliance systems would have to be developed in their own way, and they cannot be totally taken care of by this one-off infrastructure building. This is really to provide the basis so that those appliance systems can further develop. Just now I mentioned some services and the one-stop services that are not related. There is some relationship. Making use of the present structure, we can never be interfaced with the one-stop service, because if our system is lacking, we cannot have any further development. There must be some advantage, but we are going to do parallel study into the appliance systems. Dr. Chung, I think, has put forward a view for your attention. If the administration is thinking of providing a one-stop service, then you should leave some latitude for interfacing with the one-stop service. Please do not only think about your own system. Next, Mr. Poon Siu Ping. Thank you, Chair. The D1 post has been extended since 2006. You are now seeking to regularize it. Well, I cannot say no, can I? Because you're saying you need that post to oversee the work. I'd like to seek more understanding about the infrastructure. You are putting aside $170 million in terms of non-recurrent expenditure to build the infrastructure. In para 26, there is another $15 million for non-recurrent staff cost. But shouldn't you already have the staff there already? Is it that you need extra staff costs because of the new infrastructure? You say you are going to absorb it by the department's budget, but I'd like to know how you came up with the figure. And the $170 million, should that already include the non-recurrent staff cost? Ms. Lau. Thank you, Mr. Poon. Para 26, additional non-recurrent staff cost. We are talking about developing the new system. It is time limited. In those few years, when we develop the system, we need IT staff and also departmental staff to look after the system. This will be done by a contractor, but whether the design of the system is going to be of use to us, and also we need to monitor the progress. When a system is developed, as the user, we need to test the system to see whether it is practical, that it is aligned with our needs. So para 26 is about a limited time period while the system is developed. You are talking about temporary staff, or are you going to ask your existing staff also to take up the workload? Could I defer to Mr. Lee for this question? Mr. Lee? This will be done by way of internal deployment. Right now, the staff are looking after other projects, but they will have to take up the extra workload of developing the system. Any follow-up? If not, Frankie Yick. Thank you, Chair. You are now transferring a supernumerary post into a permanent post. I believe Ms. Kong, you are going to continue in that post. Is that right? This is important. I hope that you are not going to ask another person to fill the permanent post, because I would be worried whether a new system can be developed in 4 years. Well, temporarily speaking, I think Ms. Kong will remain in that post. In the paper, you mentioned future savings. But we cannot see a payback period in the paper. You're going to spend over $100 million on this. Well, I understand, because this is for building infrastructure and updating of software. That is not a big sum. But the question is, you're going to do this, and there will be a future maintenance cost for the servers and also upscaling of the software, etc., and there will be savings. And compared to your expenditure, what kind of a payback period are we talking about? Do you have the information? If not, you can supply it after the meeting. Can we supply that after the meeting, please? Thank you. Any more members for the first round? If not, I'd like to state my views also in this first round. A supernumerary post would be turned into a permanent post. We support it because the post has always been there and functioning. As for the building of the computer infrastructure and updating of the software, I think it is going to help us provide better service. However, just now I heard Ms. Lau say that the system will look after 50-odd projects for you. Is that right? The 50-odd application systems are already being supported. Well, here I'd like to know some more information. Maybe you can supply it after the meeting. Now you are supporting 50-odd projects or services. What are those services? So we know why you want to make changes to these systems later on. Give us the information early, so we know what you're going to do about, for example, the OALA applications and also the CSSA system. And there are other smaller projects as well. Perhaps we'll read the information and then we may want to comment on it. Maybe the larger categories, you mean? Well, depends. You are talking about 50 services. We'd like to know what they include. All right, that's the question from me. Any more members on this item? Anything else? If not, I'd like to consult you whether you would allow the application to go to the FC. In principle, any objection from members? That is to turn the D1 post into a permanent post and also the building of the infrastructure. If there is no objection, the item is endorsed. Thank you. Thank you, administrative officials. Next, redevelopment of Hip Hong Society's Catherine Low Center for the provision of preschool rehabilitation and other support services. Attending for this item, we have Ms. Annie Tam, PS for Labour and Welfare, Mr. Kok Chi Leung, Assistant Director of Social Welfare Subventions, and then Mr. Lam Ka Tai, Deputy Director of Social Welfare Services, and also Mr. Fong Kai Leung, Assistant Director of Social Welfare Rehabilitation and Medical Social Services. They are coming in now. I'd like to remind members that this is also related to spending. Please pay attention to Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure about Declaration of Interest. Thank you. 4 officials, please come in and be seated.
歡迎4位。
Welcome to you. Please, who will take us through the paper? P.S. Yes, Chairman. Thank you. Members, we'd like to introduce a paper on the redevelopment of Hip Hop Society's Catherine Low Center. The administration has always placed emphasis on preschool rehabilitation for newly born and those from 0 to 6 years. If they are disabled or if they are autistic or are deemed to be autistic, there will be preschool training provided, and the training will be in 3 parts. 1, early education and training. We call this EETC. Secondly, Special Child Care Center or SCCC. The 3 is KG cum SCCC. We call it IP, Integrated Program. Since the first 2 require special premises for the provision of the service, we have particular demand for such places in society. Right now, we have a high demand, and through different programs, we would like to provide more places, including the special scheme on privately owned land for welfare services. When we were here on the 10th of February, we introduced to members this special scheme. We would encourage people with the land to provide extra services through redevelopment, including EETC and SCCC services.
Hong Society is a service organization with a long history. They started, I think in 1970, they were granted a site at Sunny Bay Road to build a 3-story premises providing 66 SCC places. The center is now more than 40 years old, and there is a need for redevelopment. And the society also want to come up with a swapping arrangement so that they can be given a larger site to expand the number of SCCC places to 120. Namely increasing the number of places by 24, and they will also want to build a new EETC center, which will provide 60 subvented places. Altogether, we'll be providing 54 extra SCCC and 24 EETC places. We hope we'll be able to cater to the needs for such preschool education needs for. We hope that the services will be commissioned from 2017-18 onward. The project is supported by the Lottery Fund. The funding is about $148 million to pay for the majority of the expenses involved. The additional 54 SCC places and 60 EETC places each year, the recurring expenditure involved is more than 10 million. And therefore, according to established procedure, we hope to go to the FC for funding approval for this project. We also hope that we have the support of the panel today. Thank you, Permanent Secretary. It's now time for members to ask questions. Like I said earlier, we should note that we need to declare any interest that we may have in relation to this project. We have Dr. Fernando Chung and then Pan Siu Ping. Fernando Chung. The 2 services involving children from the age of 0 to 6, children with special educational needs, that is. We understand that there is a severe shortage of such services. The so-called early identification and intervention is only a slogan, and the government is not able to really deliver. For example, early training services, those on the waiting list is larger than the number of service places that they provide. And the waiting time, I understand, for the Southern District, for early education and training services, the waiting time is more than 2 years for the Southern District. For the SCCC, it takes about 1.5 years. So the expansion of these services is welcome. And this is the first such project to be built on private land. We support this concept. And earlier, I had expressed my concern as to whether there is a proportion between the subvented portion and the self-financed portion. This time you're also adopting a 60-40 model. 60% of the services will be subvented, 40% of the premises will be used for self-financed services. I hope that you will do your best to increase the proportion of subvented portion. 60-40 is not politically correct. I think at least you should raise the subvented portion to 80 or even 100%. I'm also concerned that we have to wait until 2017 before the project is going to be completed. And in the course of redevelopment, I understand that you have already identified a site for the society, but are there any constraints in terms of the transport facilities and so on? I'm quite familiar with the location. It's not very well served by public transport, especially for those who are physically handicapped. The Sandy Bay, is right next to the orthopedic clinic at Sandy Bay Road, and the parents always have found that to be rather remote and inaccessible because it is not served by any form of public transport, such as buses with low platforms or public transport that can cater to those who are wheelchair bound. So I'd like to ask whether or not you've taken that into consideration. Permanent Secretary. Thank you. The Hip Hop Society proposal is one of the special projects. The Hip Hop Society is able to participate in this project. They've already increased and cut down on the number of self-financed places. You see that they are now increasing 24 additional places and 60 additional places, all of which are subvented. As for the other services, which are self-financed, it will be the community support centers and I think the number of additional places that they are provided is more than 100, and all of which are subvented. I also like to take this opportunity to inform members that in Annex 3 of the paper, we've explained that in this special project for the ETC and SECC services, whether there will be an increase in number of places. I'd like to amend some of the figures. Of the 63 projects, 25 have ETC and SEC services. Number of places are 1,302 ETC and 2,506 SEC places, totaling 3,806 places, which is larger than the number that you read in Annex 3. Before we are able to complete the redevelopment, they will temporarily move to the Wah Fu estate. I think in Wah Kin House, in Wah Fu 1 estate, and Wah Tai House in Wah Fu 2 estate, we have reserved 2 temporary premises for the Hip Hop Society for the use. Last month, in the middle of last month, on the 17th of March, in fact, we've completed the fitting out of the Wah Fu Walk-in house, and the children are already receiving the special education there. As for Wah Tai House, it will mainly be used as the office, and we are already fitting out the premises, and very soon we'll be able to use it as well. I think members are also concerned about the transportation issue. After the redevelopment, we don't want to increase the traffic flow there. After redevelopment, we have 1,200 SCCC places. We'll provide for 2 larger coaches which can carry 110 persons. So we want the children to be taken to school by the school buses, so that we can cut down on, so that there will not be any adverse impact on the traffic flow there. So the 2 buses will have extra capacity. Mr. Pan Siu Ping. Thank you, Chairman. I think my concern are the same as Dr. Fernando Cheung's. The department told us about the arrangement for the school buses, and also during the redevelopment period, 2 premises at Wafu Estate will be provided for them as its temporary premises. I don't know whether or not you've consulted with the district council, and also for projects similar to this one, how many such projects there are at the moment. And secondly, right now the project is funded by the lottery fund, and of course there is a self-financed portion in the service to be provided. But if they go beyond the budget, will the extra amount be paid by the lottery fund or what? Thank you for the question. First of all, the 2 premises at Wafu Estate. We've actually consulted the district council, and we're grateful to the district councillors for the understanding, and they were in support of this arrangement. And secondly, if they go beyond the budget, and if there should be any cost overrun, then they can apply to the lottery fund for additional funding. Of course, for each project, we will closely, look at the extent to which the costs have overrun. Does the government have similar projects of this nature in the pipeline? Thank you. I've already amended the footnote 3. That is, we have 25 projects under the special scheme which provide SECC and ETC places, and this is one of those. This is the project which could be implemented at the earliest. And for the others, we will arrange for them to be implemented as soon as possible. But you don't have any concrete timetable yet for those. Yes, for this project, we expect it to be completed in 2017-2018. There is another one providing SECC and ETC project, which we expect will be completed before 2017-2018. For the other 23, I believe they will only become built after 2017-2018. But we're in close relation with the welfare sector, and we are also keen to complete them as soon as possible. Mr. Kwai Chung. Thank you. I'd like to clarify further one point. You say there will be 2 buses. Will those 2 buses be able to provide all the services required? You are now providing new services like the Parents Resource Center and the Community Training Center. I believe this is a center to help autistic children to cope with, to enhance communication skill. Are you talking about children who are attending other schools in the district and coming to this center for training after school? If that's the case, you need to bear in mind the transport issue. And if they come from other schools to this center for support service, I think they will need transport arrangements. Will those 2 buses be able to also serve those children? At the education panel, we always discuss the same issue. That is, we need these centers. Not only these centers need to be open not only Monday to Friday, but also 7 days in a week. Well, the 2 buses we referred to earlier will serve the 120 children, attending the center. and we have already expanded the seating capacity for the 2 buses because we're providing additional places. But we also have self-finance services, whether or not a community-based service and parent resource centers. If the parents take their children to receive training there, they can make use of public transport to go to the premises and to receive training. The 2 buses will only cater to the children attending the SCCC. Well, I guess that is the case. But we were saying that for other children going to the to this center, it will be quite inconvenient. The same is true for the parents. So I don't know whether you can also help them. For the self-finance portion, what is going to be the fees that will be charged? Are you able to help the parents from the lower strata so that the children can benefit from service? And also, what will be the number of places? There are many schools in the district. I hope you can increase the number of places at this center. The Hip Hong Society is a non-profit making social welfare organization. Even though they have the self-finance portion, they will only recover the cost of for the provision of services. And sometimes there are some charitable funds which make donations to the center. And because of that, they're able to waive some of the fees.
I understand Hip Hong Society also has a subvention scheme. Our understanding is that the waiver can be as high as 75%. To those who have economic difficulties, the families can apply to the fee subvention scheme, so children can still receive the service. The member also asked about the self-sufficient services and the number of places. Our estimate is that at the social support center for the autistic children, there are about 250 places. Of course, this may not happen all at once, but there would be group training. But that is a general idea only. When the plan becomes implementable, there would be a more clear estimate. Can you explain the 250 places? Of course, they will not be provided at one go, but how did you come up with that figure? As I was saying, this community-based support center is mainly for children and young people affected by autism. In the center, there will be simulated occupational training so they can learn, and also there will be social interaction training. We want to impart social interactive skills to autistic children. This will help them get employment. Thank you. Anybody else for the first round? If not, let me seek clarification on one point. Information at Annex 2? No. I am talking about money. Annex 4. A3, other rehabilitation and support services. It takes about 40% of the total sum. What does it include? Secondly, Hip Hong Society doesn't have to spend 1 cent on the entire construction project. Is that correct? Chairman, first, other rehabilitation and support services and what they include. It includes an area for social adaptation, parent support center, community-based support center, etc. The construction items. These are subsumed under A3, including offices as well. And of course, Hip Hong Society does not receive support from us for the self-sufficient facilities because they provide services above the standard. Say, for example, a covered open space in the childcare center and also larger premises at the Parents Resource Center. These are not supported by us. In other words, Hip Hong Society has to take up 8% of the total construction cost, about $8 million, right? My understanding is that first, it is going to also make use of the government land next door, and the 3-story building will become a 10-story building. Actually, there will be a much bigger gross floor area compared to the existing building. I'd like to know why you only get back 60% of the services while the remaining 40% are for self-sufficient use. I'd like to know more about your discussion with Hip Hong. I would like the administration to get more space to provide more subsidized service. I of course understand that part of the site remains in the hands of Hip Hong and it should have the authority to provide self-sufficient places. But then why don't we get 10% more? Can you explain the picture to us? So we are assured that there is no favor given to Hip Hong. As in para 5, Hip Hong has been granted land in 1970 to operate a non-profit making center. That site measures 650 square meters. It was granted to it for a non-profit making childcare center. We are now giving them another strip of land, which is government land, which measures 57 square meters only. This has also always been used by Hip Hong, by STT. Now we are asking it to give us a site of 650 square meters while we allow them to use a site of 707 square meters. But in fact, Hip Hong has always been using those two sites already. And I must emphasize that when the land was originally granted to Hip Hong, it was for non-profit making purposes. Leung Kwok Hong, first round. Chairman. Non-profit making and self-sufficiency, these are two terms, but how do they relate? When they are self-sufficient, even if they do not make a profit, they can charge a higher sum. Is that right? The PAS or PS, Hip Hong is actually a non-profit making organization. As the director explained, its expenditure and operation are such that the administration will not subsidize the self-sufficient places. And as we can see from the paper, we are subsidizing with a sum of over $10 million. But Hip Hong being non-profit making, any surplus cannot be divided up but must be plowed back to the services. As the DD said, its fees and charges will not be too high, and there is latitude for Hip Hong to subsidize needy children, because whatever fees are charged, they should be used for providing services only. So it can provide subsidies or cheaper services to children in need. Okay, I understand. I understand now that they can decide on providing self-sufficient services, but if they are subsidized, you have to say, is that right? Okay, if that's the case, then there is a clear difference. When there is an increase in proportion of self-sufficient services, even if they are using government land, the government will have a smaller say. It is just that the organization will not be able to pocket the surplus, but can the high-ranking people in the organization increase their own salaries? Or would that have to be vetted by Ms. Annie Tam to see whether the salaries are too high? Because high-ranking people decide their own salary, is that right? Who can take the question? DD. First, the self-sufficient service. We do not subsidize such services. But when Hip Hong proposed a redevelopment of Catherine Lo's center, it discussed with us what self-sufficient services they are going to provide, because we want to satisfy ourselves that those proposed services are really going to help the needy people. And in fact, that is to provide a choice to parents and children who may need it. This is the first point. Secondly, since we do not subsidize self-sufficient services, we emphasize corporate governance of the organization concerned. Hip Hong has many professionals on its executive committee which monitors the operation of the society, and its accounts have to be audited for the information of parents. When Hip Hong Society embarks on the redevelopment project, it has conducted a briefing for parents. And the parents have given their support. I understand. Can I ask you to give me the salaries and bonuses of high-ranking people in Hip Hong since 1970? Can you give me a table so I can research into the matter to see whether when there are more self-sufficient services, there are more bonuses for the high-ranking people as well? I mean, officials. Well, Chairman, we all know that in providing preschool rehabilitation services, Hip Hong has a long history, and we trust the organization. Parents have always told the administration that they would like to allow Hip Hong to increase services, be they subsidized or not, because Hip Hong is a great help to them. Therefore, we have never asked social welfare organizations to divulge internal information as such. And if they operate self-sufficient services, I hope members will have confidence, because Hip Hong has a good track record and it enjoys your trust. Well, you buy the cheese and you put it there for 2 weeks, it may become rotten. And we are talking about a period of 44 years of Hip Hong's operation. You can buy something and it can rot in 2 weeks. It's not that I don't trust people, but I trust the system. Just like to look into the matter. I'd like to know whether there is any correlation between self-sufficient services and salaries and bonuses. I'd like to know whether there is a trend. I'm not making any conclusion because I'm a reasonable person. I'd like to know whether I can detect a trend. If it is in the opposite direction, then I would be so happy, but I may take you to task then, because if people are working so hard and yet they get a lower salary, then I'll take the administration to task. I think Mr. Leung's logic has certain basis, but I'd like to ask the admin whether it will be easy for you to find that kind of information. If it is not possible in principle, then you say so. But if you can do it, then perhaps you need to furnish the information. I'm talking about bonus. Maybe they did not have bonus, but now they do. Or maybe they can have allowances. And maybe they are given rental allowance. Well, we also know that some organizations pay bonuses to all staff in that organization. I still like to monitor the situation. Can you answer that question in principle? Yes or no? Can you do it? Mr. Leung also mentioned that perhaps you can ask the organizations like Hip Hong whether they also pay out bonuses, for example. Thank you, Chair. Many of our social welfare organizations have a long history. All along, self-sufficient services are left to such organizations to make a decision. But when we provide the land or other kinds of support, then like what the DD said, we would come to some understanding with them beforehand. If we are asking for payment information about staff, we never do that. But I hope members will understand that Hip Hong and other social welfare organizations have a long history and they have done an excellent job. Perhaps I can ask Hip Hong to take you on a site visit and allow you to have a dialogue with the parents. I did that, and the parents were in tears when they told us that they needed the service. Chairman, I like to clarify. I'm not saying that the services are not required. I'd just like to know the facts. If you have a thermometer with you, it doesn't necessarily mean that the temperature will drop. Mr. Leung, I think you have expressed your observation. My understanding is that the administration has answered you that there is a systemic constraint. My understanding is that after the lump sum grant arrangement was put in, the administration cannot influence the setting of salaries for organizations, including from the very bottom to the very top ranks.
As Mr. Leung Kwok Hong said, even if previously there were no bonuses and allowances, but there are many such kinds of allowances and bonuses nowadays, and there's no way for the government to interfere with how the organization disperse such money to their staff. But when they do that, they will need to inform the government, and they cannot. The salaries of the colleagues, the salaries paid to the colleagues should not be higher than those paid to civil servants at the same rank. I think there is this constraint here, and I stand to be corrected. Mr. Kwok will clarify if I'm wrong. Mr. Kwok is responsible for this part. I understand that the three highest paid staff, I think the salaries they would need to inform the government regarding salaries paid to the top three, staff office of the organization. But is that roughly the case, Assistant Director? I think under the lump sum grant system, I think the salaries of the staff at these welfare organizations have been dealing from the civil service. So the salaries paid to the highest ranking staff in such organizations do not need to be benchmarked against the civil servants. You're right in saying that the organization will need to report to the government and the staff regarding the salaries of the three highest paid officers. I'd like to make one more point. Chairman, do the parents know in that case? You say you would inform the government and your own staff, but then LegCo doesn't know. So what are we doing? We're always accused of wasting money and filibustering. So what should we be doing? Everybody seems to know except LegCo members. Should we really call up those people to find out? I don't know whether the parents know or not, but I understand that they need to disclose that in their annual report. That is the financial report. Of course, we know that those reports can cover a very large scope. Do the officials have anything further to? I hope members do not have the misunderstanding that Hip Hong Society and other welfare agencies, if they provide for these self-sufficient services, they can charge a very high fee, which is very different from subvented services. The only difference is the government subsidize certain services, and for the self-sufficient portion, we only provide the land and pay for the construction cost. I don't think members need to worry that much. Members can look at that there are other organizations providing such similar services on a commercial basis. then you can check whether or not the fees they charge and the service standard are superior to those provided by private institutions, and whether the government, the parents are willing to use such services and find the fees reasonable. So for the private institutions which are not subvented by the government, what are the fees that they charge and the service that they provide? I think we can make a comparison. So I think one can compare the price, the fees, and the service quality. Mr. Yik Chi Ming, I'm not, targeting against the Ipoh Society, but I would like to ask the Public Secretary to consider this. Like listed companies, they would disclose the banding of the highest paid staff. Of course, I understand you don't have the power to require them to do that, but I would hope that you encourage them to do so. This is really useful. If the group wants to support any particular organization, if our group, for example, wants to do that, I would like to know what are their administrative expenses. It's difficult for us to find such information, but sometimes on the internet we can find out that for some major welfare organizations, the senior management may spend a lot on overseas visits and so on. So I think such information is important. I understand that you have no power to compel them to make such disclosure, but then it's for their own benefit, because the more transparent they are, the better the public would know, and the more willing we are to support such organizations. Thank you, Mr. Yik. So if I may sum up then, Mr. Leung Kwok Hong made an observation. I understand that not many organizations operate in the manner as expected by Mr. Leung, but we'd like to tell the government that you may need to do something in terms of closely monitoring these operations of these organizations. Oh, we have a question for the second round. Dr. Fernando Zhao. I'd like to follow up on one point. To follow up on I think Mr. Leung Kwok Hong made a very reasonable point. Many of the subvented welfare organizations, including and also tertiary institutions, they also disclose the salaries of the senior management staff. After the Sutherland report, the Audit Commission has also, produced a report requiring all subvented tertiary institutions, those who are funded by the UGA, to disclose the salaries of the senior management. So to follow up on Mr. Leung Kwok Hong's question, I've just look up the website of the Human Society, and this information is not disclosed there. I can't find the website of the Human Society. Even if I could that, I cannot find a section regarding such disclosure or any part regarding connected transactions. This is a basic requirement for financial report in many jurisdictions. So I hope the administration should really seriously consider the point made by Mr. Leung, which is, I think it's a good thing that the Human Society is increasing the number of places, and because there's and the children cannot afford to wait for too long, and we have more than 7,000 people wait on the waiting list. You're only increasing, a few hundred extra places is far from enough. On the one hand, we find that for the youth centers, they're telling us that because of the aging population, some of the youth centers would need to be would close down or converted for other uses. Could you consider converting some of these youth centers to provide for children with SEN, not necessarily those between the age of 0 to 6, but even young people with SENs or ethnic minorities? You could make use of such premises to train some talents so that the facilities and that you can provide services in areas where there is a serious shortfall, rather than waiting for the facility to be built before you can offer the services. I don't know whether or not you have such consideration. Any response from the department? For children from the age of 0 to 6, we want to help them as best we can, and we are trying our best. Between now to 2017-2018, the SWD is now constantly looking for suitable sites for us to provide such services. We've now identified more than 1,000 places. There are already 3,000 odd people receiving services. And I think this will go a long way in relieving the shortage. For our youth centers, we serve those from children from the age of 6 to 24. Of course, we certainly look into the suggestion made by members earlier. Without changing the overall system, well, some young people may attend activities of the youth centers, but we could also come up with some special arrangements. Even for the comprehensive youth centers, some of the operators also offer rehabilitation services. We certainly go back and consider the suggestion made by members earlier. Other than Mr. Leung Kwok Hong for the second round, anyone else? If not, I think we've just made it in time. Otherwise, I may need to extend our meeting. Okay, Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, 3 minutes. Of course, you can't change the system overnight. But if the government support a particular organization by granting land or whatever, and the management of the organization has the opportunity to, by way of expanding the number of places, to obtain more benefits for themselves. It's like the MTRC. The more investments they make, with the same rate of profit, they will still get a higher pay. I think you've misunderstood my point. Whether or not the services are necessary is a decision for the consumers. If I'm in the management, if the turnover is 300 million, it's better than 200 million. But service turnover of 300 million may not be better than 200 million, right? I mean, so in the community. So that's why I asked why do the parents know, because parents don't. Some parents may think that, the services are too extravagant, you should leave it to the private sector. After you've subvented the services, the private operators are not competing with them on a level playing field. You engage a private organization to provide such services, they will be working under more constraint. They'll have to worry about the results and the turnover because they don't have the land. So if you don't resolve these problems, I don't think that's right. Some people may be saying that I'm trying to obstruct the passage of the proposal. But I really hope that you will consider, my point. If you think that I'm not being reasonable, you can refute my argument. Because I think the market is being distorted. It's totally distorted. If the market is distorted, you think, well, you're not doing everything you should. The Hebrew Society was set up in 1970. It's been 44 years since. So I say it again. If you buy a piece of cheese, after 2 weeks it will simply rot. I think your point is taken, Mr. Leung. I'm sure the department has heard your views, and the conclusion is that they would need to also take this into consideration. May I now consult with members? That is, the redevelopment of the Catherine Low Center of the Hee Hwan Society and the provision of the SCCC services, all the proposal will need to go to the FC. I'd like to ask whether members will object to this proposal. If not, then the proposal is carried, and thank you very much. We now come to AOB. Since we don't have any other business, I'd like to declare that our next meeting is scheduled for May 12th, but during the interim, we don't know whether or not the sitting will run from Monday to Friday, or some members suggested we should only have sittings from Wednesday to Friday. May 12th is a scheduled day, but there is a possibility that we may need to reschedule. This is just a reminder. Thank you very much.